Hi, everyone. I'm here to talk to you for a minute about the market maps that we do here at Legal Tech Hub because we're going to do a refresh of a lot of them. You may have seen them going around LinkedIn or you've seen them in your inbox in a newsletter. But what we've been doing since the spring of this year is mapping out the marketplace in terms of AI use in legal tech tools. We started with our generative AI map for legal, which started with 400 solutions. Now, quarterly, we've been updating it and are up to over 700 of them. And we're going to be doing a quarterly refresh, which coincides with the end of the year for all of the legal tech solutions that use generative AI that we are aware of. We also did an agentic AI map over the summer that we will be refreshing for the end of the year. And now in coordination with the Blickstein Group, we're mapping out the ecosystem for solutions specifically for corporate law or in-house lawyers. And so every time we publish these maps, we get a great response. But one of the biggest ones we get is, why am I not on it? How do I get on your maps? And that's what I'm here to tell you. It's actually an easy answer. If you're not on it, it's because we don't know about you. So what we need you to do, if you want to be included in these market maps, is to create or update your profile on Legal Tech Hub. And that's free. Every company can have that free profile. And we need to know if you are using AI, if you're using generative AI, if you're using agentic AI, specifically for law firms or corporate legal. So the answer to everyone's question of how do I get on this map is we just need to know what you're doing. So this is your PSA to update or create your profile on Legal Tech Hub so that you will be included in our next data sweep to be on our maps for the end of the year. We're currently working on our map for corporate legal. And so if you want to be on any of those maps because that's what you do, go to legaltechnologyhub.com and there's a link on there about how to create or update your free profile. Or if you have any questions, you can email curation@legaltechnologyhub.com. So let us know what you're doing so we can let the market know what you're doing and you can be on our next map if it's appropriate. Thanks.
Welcome to the Geek in Review, the podcast focused on innovative and creative ideas in the legal industry. I'm Marlene Gabauer.
And I'm Greg Lambert.
So, Greg, before we begin, I want to acknowledge the passing of a dear friend from our KM community, Kim Stein. Many knew Kim from her work with Lexis, Thomson Reuters, and Upland Software. Others probably knew her from her many conference dinners and happy hours that she hosted. She had a big personality and a very generous spirit. She was really fun. She was loyal and deeply present for people that she cared about. I'm going to miss her deeply, and today's episode is dedicated to her.
Thanks for doing that, Marlene. Well, it is that time of year again where we've brought in a couple of experts to help us look back on 2025 and look forward into 2026. And they were with us last year, so we've got a scorecard to kind of look at how we did, and so you can then use that to determine how much you depend on us to predict the future.
See how good we are.
So they're returning for our annual State of the Union address on the legal tech industry. We have our good friends, Sarah Glassmeyer and Niki Black. So Niki and Sarah, thanks for joining us again.
Good to be here.
Yeah, looking forward to it.
So a little bit of background in case anybody out there doesn't know, but Sarah Glassmeyer is the Director of Data Curation at Legal Technology Hub and the industry's resident truth teller, or as she might say, the neighborhood busybody of legal tech. And Niki Black is the Principal Legal Insight Strategist at 8am. She brings data-backed perspective of the solo and small firm market, tracking what lawyers are actually doing versus what the hype says they should be doing.
All right. Welcome, guys.
Welcome back.
I was so nervous when I saw this invite.
I was like, I'm really surprised after the last time that they're like, okay, we're going to do it again.
Well, I like the neighborhood busybody. I think of Mrs. Kravitz from Bewitched. So
yeah.
And I only watched those in reruns. I'm not old enough to have watched them when they came out.
So he says.
All right. Well, before we dive in to the absolute chaos that was 2025, let's look back and take some receipts on last year. So in December of 2024, our consensus was that 2025 would be the year that the novelty wore off and the boring became useful. Sarah, did the boring become useful, or are we still?
I
What
no,
do you
I
what do
don't
you
Me,
think?
think
me.
I was like, that's what I was thinking. There's got to be like either like a French or German word to explain the feeling we have because it's I was thinking about like other tech adoption cycles. There's like two kind of like weighty charts to think of. And one is the Gartner hype cycle, where it's like inflated expectations and then trough to delusionment. And then, then it becomes like useful tech. But you also that is overlaid or like same thing with the tech adoption cycle, where you usually have like early adopters and like the real innovator type people. And then it kind of like spreads through the organization and then people start. Cause like, but like the problem with AI and like LLMs and generative AI it's like everything was thrown at everyone all at once, and it's also, like, ubiquitous because like, there's no you weren't, like, watching a Super Bowl and seeing a ad for a document automation tool or a timekeeping tool, but it's like, "Here's generative AI, and you can play with it, and here's how it changes your life," and it's also, like, not just work, it's also, like, plan your kid's birthday party or figure out how to cook dinner, I mean, it's, like, everywhere, and I think we're, like, overwhelmed with possibility still. Like, it's just, like, I don't even know where to
Yeah.
use it, and that's the thing. It's not like, "Oh, here's one finite tool that
Yeah.
does, like, contract review," or, "Here's one finite tool that you can use." It's the Ginzu nut it slices and dices, it does everything, and it's everyone's like, "Well, I don't where do I even begin?" Like, so that's the thing. It's, like, it's everywhere, and, every vertical of legal tech has an option pretty much somehow to use Gen AI in some facet of it, but it's like like, it's still not being adopted because we also have to go through, like, traditional adoption like, it's not that special, like, you still have to do, like, a use case and have
Yeah,
it be, like,
you said the Gartner hype cycle. I haven't heard anyone reference the Gartner hype cycle in months, now that I think about it. Maybe it's just the crowd I run into, but I think, what you were alluding to is right, that this is kinda off the scale as
It's a
far as.
constant hype cycle,
Yeah,
you
Yeah.
so
know, because it's like new things, like, ooh, squirrel, and
we're in the trough of disillusionment for, ChatGPT, 4.1 or '03, but now we're on 5.2. So
I know. It's just
Yeah.
and it's
And
also
I
just
wanna
like
piggyback on what Sarah's saying. It's like AI is advertised as the tool, not like the tool is powered by AI, which makes that much more hard to
Mm,
figure out, okay, what do I use it for? Because I mean, you could have like, okay, this is the contract aspect that it does. It does contact drafting. Okay, everybody understands that. But if you're saying, oh, this is just an AI tool and it does everything, then I think it becomes astronomically hard for people to say, does this apply to me and how?
yeah, I mean, it's just like the other thing is, like, as part of the conversation about it, there are some people who, like, have made their whole personality hating AI, and there's some people who've made their whole personality being like, "AI is going to change everything," and it's also like so it's, like, not helping the conversation and trying to actually figure these things out. But it's, like, it's so fascinating to, like, see on LinkedIn how some people are just, like and we'll probably talk about this a little bit later, but, like, the Reddit subcomments, the
oh, yeah.
legal tech subreddit, and just, like, how people there just, like, Harvey, hate it, it's just, like but you go on LinkedIn and there's like the real like fanboys of certain tools. It's just like really like, huh? It's just like no one's getting this
So
hyped about a
invested.
timekeeping tool. Maybe they should. I mean, that's the thing. Like, did you care about like the underlying tech before this? Like, so just stop worrying about. It's really weird. I don't know. It's kind of broken everyone's brains.
I
Yeah.
tend to look at things from sort of a bird's eye view and then from a practical view. So, by bird's eye view, I mean, in the context of everything that's happening, I think that you can't really look at AI without looking at sort of there's this feeling of chaos within technology and AI and legal tech even, but there's just chaos across the board. And I think that like it just feeds into that. Like nothing is predictable, whether it's the where we are in the AI hype cycle, whether it's what's happening on a geopolitical basis, what's happening within our own country. There's just so much unpredictability. And I think that that makes it so that the AI adoption and hype cycle feels even crazier than it actually is. It does feel like there's just something different being spoken about at every conference. I mean, agentic AI, everyone's talking about agentic AI, but very few people have implemented it. All the legal tech companies are incorporating AI into their software. I mean, without fail, I think practically every platform's done that at this point in one way or another. And they're having deeper and deeper integrations over time as they start to figure this out. So people are just able to use AI in the tools that they're already using on that more practical or granular level, even though it feels like we're in a hype cycle. The data shows, at least the data that we have, that the adoption levels are exponential, unlike anything that I've ever seen before. I tracked the cloud computing adoption. I wrote Cloud Computing for Lawyers in 2012 that the ABA published. And I've been tracking cloud adoption ever since, really since like 2010. And we were stuck at about 30% for cloud computing adoption for years, starting in about 2015. And it wasn't until the pandemic that pushed us over 50%. And now, as we all know, even the larger legal software companies are sunsetting their server-based stuff and pushing people into the cloud. So now we're kind of but that took a long time. I mean, we're talking, the cloud came out in 2007. Here we are in 2025, finally seeing cloud adoption at a large scale level. But with generative AI, which came out in the fall of 2022, 3 years ago, last year our data, I write the 8 a.m.'s legal industry report, and this is my 5th year doing it. And last year we had a whole section on generative AI, and the year before we did as well. And so it's interesting to see over time the adoption levels. And these were lawyers across the board, but I would argue that it was more, not argue, the data shows that it was more solo, small, and mid-sized firms versus large. But our data showed that the adoption went up significantly. It was close to 3/4 of the individuals surveyed were using it in their daily legal work, general purpose tools, compared to 31% last year and 27% the year before. And then when you talk about law firms, we found that 46% of law firms had adopted these tools, and that was up from 21% last year of legal specific tools that law firms were adopting. So the numbers are going up significantly, and it may feel like there's not a lot of adoption, but there really isn't. That's why we're seeing so many headlines, about all the hallucinations. Lawyers are using it.
And I don't really remember this happening before, but like FOMO, like people are definitely having that fear of missing out that they like, I want to have it, and I want to try it at least. 'Cause that's, I was kind of thinking, I was speaking to a group a few weeks ago and they said, we can't wait till we get our hands on Harvey. And I was like, well, what are you going to do with it? And they're like, we don't
I have
know.
no idea. Go to
Like, you need
play.
to have a plan. Like, that's not,
But we have it.
but like, they're like, that's the thing. It's like the cool kids get Harvey and we want Harvey. And like, we want, and it's just like this weird, like, I don't know. It's just like stan culture coming to legal tech and like people just really wanting to be able to say they have it. And it's like not great for actual business productivity. But yeah, I mean, that's the thing. Like it took, that's the thing. Why we worked at Rain and Court. That was the thing that we had this like safe cloud because still the cloud was still dangerous and it was scary. And that was 2021 for a lot of big law. Now it's like, yeah, you just
Yeah.
put it up there. We don't
Yeah.
care. But yeah.
Yeah, well, one of the things that I think is significantly different now this year in 2025 than it was in 2024, and this is a very hard metric to nail down, but I tell people that I've been in the legal industry since 1994 when I started law school, right? I have never seen lawyers excited about the work that they do. And this year it was like a switch got flipped and they're just like, oh, you know what? This boring thing that I've been doing for years. Now I got this, I got Chat GPT to do this. And then of course, then I rush into the room and say, no, you can't use Chat GPT. Here, use Harvey, which uses Chat GPT. But
Right.
this excitement level is something that I've never, ever seen before. I don't know how we can maintain it, but it makes it a lot easier to work with lawyers this year than it's ever been.
Well, and another really interesting thing I think that is happening really recently, like in the last few weeks, I've noticed this. When you're talking about ChatGPT versus Harvey, a lot of people, especially in the solo and small firm space that are considered experts in this space, are suggesting that the business versions of ChatGPT, of Gemini, of Claude are sufficient have sufficient protections for the vast majority of legal work, and that you can use those for most and input most data unless it's particularly sensitive and use those. And they're much more affordable. I mean, Harvey's not cheap, and it's
Yeah.
way above the budgets of most small and solo law firms. And so that's you're starting to see this sort of trend where those companies are understanding the business needs of different professions, and they're incorporating controls in the business levels, the business tiers that provide the levels of security and confidentiality that people need. And so that's going to be interesting to see how that impacts things. And that was the other thing that we noticed in our in the industry report is that there are more law firms investing in Chat GPT and those other general purpose tools compared to legal specific tools, at least more at the mid-size and small firm level. But it's interesting to see sort of these trends over time.
Yeah.
And that was actually
You,
one of my predictions for 2026 is that, the specialness of legal tech is not going to be always there anymore for two reasons. One, kind of building on what Greg said, back in the old days when I was, working in digitization of library services, we always talked about
woohoo!
our, like the four, the four horsemen that were competing against of Facebook, Amazon, Apple, and Google, that you needed your online versions to be as easy as that. Like, is checking out an ebook as easy as getting an ebook from Amazon. And that's the thing. There's now like all these commercial versions of specialized tech. Like, why use a Harvey or a Lagora when you could do OpenAI? And that's the other thing is that OpenAI is coming for legal tech. I mean, they have our professional services. I think it was them that just like whipped up this little kind of contract maintenance tool or contract review, contract drafting tool that is one of the main ones. It's either them or Gemini. But yeah, I mean, so it's the thing like they see lawyers now as a customer, the general purpose tools that's so I mean, that's the thing. What's IltaCon going to look like now if like OpenAI has a booth right there next to Harvey? I mean, so I think we're going to see a lot more, the nice past 20, 30, 40 years, legal tech's been our own nice little enclave of weirdos where we kind of know what lawyers want and all of our special needs. But now I think we are going to see some of like the bigger players kind of like coming into this space, and that'll be interesting to see how that all changes everything.
Be celebrity death match at ILTA.
Well, and that was a bunch of years, a legal week, 3 years ago, like right after ChatGPT came out. I actually got in a really heated conversation during dinner with a legal tech founder who told me that respectfully, I didn't know what I was talking about when I suggested he was a little rude to me, and I responded in kind, but I suggested that I thought that in a few years, OpenAI and some of these other tools would have the ability to produce low hallucination rates and legal specific tools, because once they train it on that data, they may be able to produce output that is at least as good or close to what the legal specific tools are going to be producing. And he ardently disagreed with me, but then again, he was the CEO of a tech company, but I think a legal tech company. But I do think that where that's happening now, we're getting to this point where these tools may be able to, and they have a lot more spending power, and they have a lot more investment, and they have a lot better ability to advertise and reach people than a lot of these smaller legal tech companies in comparison. So it'll be interesting to see how this all plays out. But it's a really strange time to be
Yeah.
covering legal
We've
tech.
we've talked about on the podcast about like how maybe OpenAI would buy an information company, and if that happened,
Yeah.
God knows what would happen after that.
Yeah.
So
I used to pitch Microsoft buying Thomson Reuters, but now it's OpenAI. I will say just one thing, just to kind of close this, and then we can move on to hallucinations. The thing that OpenAI is doing that seems to say they're not going after legal yet is just the amount of investment that they're putting into the legal industry for them to use their product. So it's like the circular, it's like, well, we're supporting you in order for you to support us. But yeah, I think Niki, you're right. Once the legal industry isn't necessarily, or at least the legal vendors aren't big enough to support OpenAI, they could go direct, cut out the middleman and take the whole thing for themselves. So that will be. Do you think 2026 will be that year, or do you think it'll be later if it happens?
I think 2026, you're gonna start to see signs that it'll happen, but I predict it's gonna be mid to late 2027 where that may start to, maybe not in large law firms, but large law firms are not the majority of legal practitioners. So I think you're gonna see it in the mid-side market down. happening a lot more because they can't afford these other products. They're going to have to use OpenAI and Gemini. And a lot of them already, or Microsoft, you know what I mean? Because these are the tools, the ecosystems they're already in, and it's going to make the most sense for them to use them. And then use the tools that are on a smaller scale built into the products they're already using that only have like siloed feature sets, that work specifically within those products. So, and it'll be, I don't know. It's a really interesting, I keep saying interesting. I'm really repeating myself here, but I think that's what I keep landing on too. It's a weird times, but we'll see.
It's definitely weird times. Well, let's jump into hallucinations. So, last year, Sarah, we were talking a lot about, or the last couple of years, how the vendors were really hanging, or the legal information vendors, Westlaw, Lexis, all of them were hanging their support on the retrieval augmented generation as the savior for the hallucinations. Some were even coming out in their promo materials as hallucination free. So, I we still hear almost weekly of some lawyer getting busted for going to probably the free version of ChatGPT and asking it to do legal research. What's your view on the industry now, as far as at least the vendors, on how well they're doing in preventing this, and thus the reason that we still need legal information vendors in AI?
It's interesting. So I talked to a lot of legal tech founders and developers, and there's a couple of different kinds. And some are lawyers who had like a particular problem and they decided to like hook up with some tech people and solve that problem. And then you have other people, especially now in the Gen AI world, that they were a data scientist of some sort. And they were just looking for a new challenge. And they're like, hey, law has a lot of words. They can attack that. And so I was talking to one of those such founders. And it really just blew my mind. I don't know why it did, but he said, yeah, hallucinations are a feature, not a bug. And I was like,
You're welcome.
oh, are you sure about
We're
that?
here
But
to help.
he's
There
just
you
like,
go.
from the way these tools work and from the way like my mindset as a data scientist, it is a feature. Like we want it to like kind of extrapolate and make things up. And it's like, do we though? But so with Reg, that is a thing that it does. I know like VLEX goes through and cites everything directly. And I just had this after like probably the 10th, thing that came across my social media feed of a lawyer getting busted for submitting a hallucinated case, it just reminded me so much of back in the old days when I taught key citing and shepherds and like telling my students, okay, it's a yellow flag, but you need to still go read the case. And they're like, yes, Professor Glassmeyer, we will absolutely read the case. And I just realized they didn't read the case, I bet now. I think they were lying. And so really, for a lawyer's kind of duty of competence and duty of work, you should treat it just like key citing. And also, P.S., you should have been reading the case when you were key citing or shepherdizing stuff. I mean, it's that you are always going to have to do some due diligence. You shouldn't have been trusting these tools in the past anyway. I remember it's Aaron Kirshenfeld, I think is his last name. He's at UNC. He did this really interesting study of like looking at the differences between TR and Lexis and their flagging systems and what it actually meant, and realizing that it really wasn't a firm science behind it. So I think it's just kind of a continuation of what we've always have been dealing with. We maybe not realize we were dealing in a world where you had to always verify everything coming from these magic boxes, but we really have had to always do this. And so I'm not like overly worried about it. In fact, but like the fact is that you have to verify. You're never going to not be able to verify. And P.S., you should have always been verifying. But yeah, I mean, that is going to be at least, and also one of the things with LLMs and generative AI, there's so many tools or so many like options of like what they actually do that legal research is actually just a small part of is a small part of lawyer work. And it's a small part of, the capabilities of these tools. So like, don't worry, like if you're doing like straight on legal research, I would stick with a legal research company because that has like a backup of a corpus that it will do reg on, and you can go back and read the cases to make sure everything's being cited correctly. Or like other workflows, sure, like don't worry about it so much. Like use those other generalized tools or more like non-TR, Alexis, or VLEX based tools.
Yeah.
That's my thought.
I've always wondered why research is like the holy grail for Gen AI. Like that was like one of the first things I gravitated to. It's like, why that?
And it's super hard.
Yeah.
And that's the thing that like it's one of those things because it's like, having talked to other people like about this, like it's a process, and sometimes the right answer is there no right answer, that it's something that it just hasn't been settled law yet. And so And also the fact that the corpuses are so hard to get a hold of. There's basically like 4 companies now that have like all the law. Yeah, so there's like so many other things you can do with generative AI and LLMs. Do that. Leave legal research alone. It's like, and that's actually might be
Uh,
one of the problems of why this adopt, because it's such a hard skill, and it's such a skill in a process, and it's so like obviously if it's an error, why start at that as your entry point to this tool? Like, yeah, do something like reading narrative, trying to create timekeeping narrative or something like that. Like something's not so black and white or gray, as the case may be.
Well,
So
one of
Nick,
Nikki,
my
what are you seeing on
I was going to say with Nikki.
the small law side of things when it comes to
well,
hallucinations? Are they abandoning that, or are they still going headstrong into the
I mean,
winds there?
I don't even know if it's from a small law perspective. I mean, all lawyers are using this and they're all ending up so many of them are ending up in the headlines. One of the most interesting things that I've seen very recently, though, was one of the recent orders that was a big sanction order where the person was sanctioned significantly. When they described their research process, it was kind of fascinating because I think this fear of hallucinations and everybody saying double check, triple check, make sure it's accurate. This person used 6 different tools, some of which were legal specific. Like they use like OpenAI, I think they use Claude.
It
I think they
takes
use like
longer.
LexisNexis, VLEX, and some other. I don't even know what they it might have been like. I don't want to like throw certain ones under the bus. I'm not even sure, but it was definitely some very well-known legal specific tools. One may have been like a brief drafter or a contract drafter, and then some consumer tools, and they used all of them to cross check and triple check their work. And at that point, it's like a game of telephone. You enter it into one,
Exactly.
ask them to check it, pop it into another, and by the time it comes out of the 8th tool, of
Yeah,
course it's not accurate. And I feel like people are so terrified of screwing up that this is what's happening. Like they're just doing site checking in one, but then it changes some words and they don't realize it did it because that's what these tools do. And so I think that it's like becoming a lose-lose situation where when you're talking about research and drafting briefs, I really don't think you should be using for the initial draft any of these tools. I think it's okay to for editing the text or the grammar and possibly double checking your argument, but keep your original that you wrote, that you did the research on a traditional tool, that you drafted on your own, so that it doesn't get all screwed up. And then use one of those tools that cross checks to make sure there's no changes. I forget what they're called, but when like opposing counsel submits some like a new contract and you cross check to see, I don't know what they're called because I never did
yeah.
contract law,
Brief
but
analyzer. Some,
yeah, but I do feel bad for practitioners right now because this just wasn't when I was practicing law, this was not a thing. And it's got to be kind of scary. You don't want to be
And
a headline. You don't want those 10,000, 20,000, $30,000 sanctions they're starting to hand out now.
and there's
But
also like a financial aspect to it. Like, is the client going to pay for all of that? Do they know? Do they understand that it's necessary? Is it necessary to cross check it 5 different times? And so that's a discussion too.
yeah. Well, I
and
I
does
do
that
want to
save
say,
on
oh,
productivity? No.
yeah, no, not yet.
No, no, it doesn't. Let us explain why.
I do want to say something positive though that I've seen, especially maybe in the last 6 months, and it was noticeable enough that when I was at the Clio conference, I had a conversation with Ed Walters on the side, and I asked him, I'm like, because I was like, Ed, I am seeing a significant improvement on the answers that are coming back from the legal research tools, and I just kind of let him know straight up. I was like, for 2 years it was crap. It was not good with the results. And then all of a sudden, maybe this summer, I started noticing that the answers are coming back. They were much more coherent. The cases and statutes that they were referencing were much more on point. Still not perfect, but a hell of a lot better. And I asked him, I said, is it the reasoning models? Is it because the foundation models have improved? And he pointed out, and I've since have done like 2 months of research on this, that it's like, yeah, well, that's part of it. But the other part is that one, the information vendors are better understanding how to gather the information and group the information, whether it's in a RAG or a vector database for the RAG technology or into a knowledge graph for the hierarchy of how legal is set up. So now it's essentially set up in 2 categories. it's put in the vector data. The data is put in the vector databases and chunked and put in so that the contextual information can be understood. And then it's also put in, so there's two set of data storage that they're putting in, and it's also put into the knowledge graph so that it understands the hierarchy of the courts, whether it's overturned, whether it's been cited. And so it goes from one back to the other to compare those and get the best matches before it's brought back and the answers generated. So the retrieval part and the augmentation part has advanced quite a bit in the last 6 months, and it's that then the generation thus is being a little bit better. So, I think there's a when it when they jumped on RAG, it was just throw everything into the vector database. We can do
Mhm.
contextual, which really finally gave us what we were promised in 2002 of natural language search. And it finally came to fruition 23 years later, but it was just not getting that, that second level of stuff, and they finally are figuring that out. So kudos to some of them, because I think if you did the same research a year ago and you do it now, it is significantly better than it was. It's not perfect, but it is much, much better. So
Yeah, I mean, again, one of those Ed Walter Commons things is like, this is as bad as AI is ever going to be. It's always going to get better. And it's also kind of a shame, like how it was like such a splash and everyone got their hands on it 2.5 years ago.
it was
And we're like, it
terrible.
sucks. Yeah, like, I don't ever want to again without realizing, like, we'll just give it time to improve. Like it was like too much of an explosion that too many people got to try it instead of letting it work its kinks out and then trying it.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I want to talk a little bit about mashups because this was definitely the year of mashups. You had big law tech and mashing up with small law tech, and then you had vendor mashups. So I think Greg, you were calling the Clio acquisition of VLEX their big swing at big law. And I'll direct the question to Niki. What do you think this consolidation means for mid-sized firms or for large firms? Are we moving into the Apple versus Android of law?
Well, so I don't know if you recall, I used to be part of a company called AppFolio. That my case was owned by them for 8 years, and a lot of people that worked from at AppFolio came from Citrix, from the server-based universe back in the day. And when at the time, law practice management had there was like whack-a-mole with law practice management. There were just so many different companies popping up that were small startups, and you had like the big three at that point, which I would argue are my case, Clio and Rocket Matter. And then all these other ones started popping up, and there were so many. And one of those people that came from Citrix said, listen, it wasn't a Battlestar Galactica reference. That wasn't their intent, but it was. This has all happened before. It's going to all happen again. We've seen this in the server based world. All these companies pop up, there's massive consolidation, then there's just a few big players. And then you saw that with practice management and then the cloud in general, right? Like all the legal cloud products, you see, I saw it in e-discovery as well, right? All of the like a whack-a-mole consolidation, a few big players. And so I think that what we're seeing now is AI has kind of created a new category of this, but that's the same thing that's happening. And I don't think it's all just going to be consolidation. I don't think it's going, and I think what Clio did and VLEX, this acquisition, was very interesting. And I definitely think that it was notable. But what it really did was it made everybody around them, the LexisNexis and Thomson Reuters, sit up and take notice about this common. And they've tried to do this before too, combine the practice of law and the business of law. But pre AI, that didn't go so well. And a couple people, I think Ken Crutchfeld is one person that wrote about that. But
Mhm.
AI changes the game, and so now everybody's looking. Just today, Adoran announced a Harvey integration. So it's not just going to be acquisitions; it's going to be integrations. It's not all about M&A. It's integrations
Yeah.
between the business of law and the research, like the actual work of law, the practice of law. And so you're going to see acquisitions like that continue along that vein, but you're also going to see tons and tons of integrations where I don't necessarily agree that it's going to be the single platform that everybody works in. Some people may choose that route, but others are going to be like, no, I like my practice management software, or I really like Harvey. I don't want to switch to VLEX, or I like, some other tool, like my document management. I like NetDocs, and I don't want to switch into some other environment. So they're going to look for those integrations that are going to give them the functionality they need, especially as you move up into the larger firms. So it's again, it, there's definitely consolidation, but I don't think if there's gonna be some big major players, it's gonna be, I've been thinking this all along, it's gonna be OpenAI, Google, Microsoft, or something. I don't think there's gonna be huge players in our space because I think that big players in our space are gonna get dwarfed at that level as things level out across the software in general, not just legal tech.
Well, how do we keep from going into what Cory Doctorow calls the enshittification of everything, which basically you get 4 or 5 companies that run an entire industry. What happens is they don't necessarily look at what they can do for the customer, but rather what can they get from the customer to then pad the bottom line of their company. So it's like you see less and less really good features coming out, and you see more and more gathering information from their clients and then spinning that into whatever the next product it is that they're going to sell, which is half as good as what you originally bought. I
I
always worry when we get into that, and especially if it's like you potentially project, Nikki, and that it's not even legal companies that are going to be doing this. Is going to be these broader, global behemoths of AI that are running the world. Well, I mean,
well,
after a while, we'll just let AI do everything, and then we can just get our universal income, and just go, and it will be in Star Trek world.
Well, I mean, listen, it's that's capitalism, like late stage capitalism. That's just what happens across the board. And I think the only solution is like a reboot. I think that, if you operate, I like to operate under the assumption we're in a simulation. So we just need a reboot. We got to like try this all over again because at this point, the stress test has not worked and everything's becoming shitified. So they just need to start over again. So I think
All
that's
right,
the
so
solution.
Nikki's projecting revolution.
I'm rejecting just the reboot of the simulation. Not even
Okay,
revolution. I just think everything needs to be
take the blue
restarted.
pill. Take the blue pill.
Yeah.
I mean, so that's what, so literally 15 years ago now, I made a chart. It's one of those things I did like spontaneously because I was kind of bored one day and it turned into like this big thing that showed the consolidation of the legal publishing market. And, there used to be starting back in the late, late 1800s, early dozens of companies. And it came down to basically just Thomson Reuters and Lexis and then, to an extent, Walters Kluwer. And I still like taught to law schools classes. I always show that. And I'm like, well, we learned our lesson. That's why I'm in legal tech, because I was so mad because legal publishers treated librarians so badly. And it was like we had no choice, no like real power in the relationship. But then I show like this new slide of just like M&A and in legal tech. And I have grave concerns about this as well, because like once again, we learned this lesson in libraries. Will we learn it in like the broader legal tech world? I hope so. But also one of the things that, I've always been like very hopeful for and promoting is the idea of integrations. Like, yeah, keep your small company and integrate, use APIs, use opens and use standards like Sally or Foley or whatever they're calling all that whole mess. I don't even know what's going on there, but like, there are like options to do data standards so your, different tools can talk well with each. So, but as far as like the VLEX Clio thing, it's so funny like to compare that to TR because that's also, there's kind of like one of those running jokes in the nerdy legal tech world is like, what's your favorite product that TR bought and ruined? It's
Yeah.
like they're kind of notorious for doing that because they are such a huge corporation. I'm very hopeful though about the VLEX Clio thing for many reasons. I think because there was like personal relationships between the various product teams and owners that there will be slightly more care done, that it won't be like a huge conglomerate and shitification. But also, I don't know, maybe I'm just like fooled by Jack Newton's pleasant Canadian exterior that he's like, well, let's just trust Jack Newton. He's fine. He's not
Yeah.
gonna screw us all over. But also just the idea that because Clio or VLEX has like what I consider world-class tools, like they're up there with all the big guys. And now with Clio's general customer base, like I could care less about them kicking it up to Big Law. They're making a play for Big Law. I think it's really exciting that the traditional Clio customer base will now have access to these kinds of AI tools, which they may not have been able to get to before because Harveys won't sell the solos like at present, but now they can try to start experimenting with these various types of tools. So I'm pretty excited about that, both just for opportunities for some of these smaller, mid-sized law that they can really take advantage of the AI efficiencies and either for access to justice purposes or for profitability purposes, they're really going to be able to benefit from these tools, which they maybe not have been able to do before. And also, like this, I before when I was saying like don't be a fangirl or fanboy to legal tech because that's weird. The scream I scrumped when I saw on the news come through about Clio and VLEX. I always keep calling it like the Taylor and Travis of legal tech, but it was so exciting that they're like, oh, good for them. They're getting together.
Yeah, I saw the size of that ring. It was pretty massive. All right. Well, the next time I see Jack and Ed, I'll ask which one's Taylor and which one's Travis. Let's skip to the next part where we're talking about whether or not we trust the infrastructure with AI and also the issue of shadow AI, which we've kind of woven through this entire conversation without actually saying shadow AI. Marlene and I had spoken with Nam Nguyen from True Systems back in October, and there seems to and his whole thing was like, all right, let's keep honest people honest, but let's also verify that honest people are staying honest with the AI system. And in fact, I just saw today with on Harvey when I logged in was with the advent of ChatGPT 5.2, which is agentic at default now. Now it's, well, we have 5.2, but it's with the Harvey guardrails on it now. So now they've got to actually put in guardrails against the systems as they advance. So it's this really interesting dynamic between the builders and the foundation model. So Niki, let me pop it over to you. Do you see this as, we're going to need much more hard policies and surveillance on the usage of AI as these models get more complex, or do we rely upon the vendors to do that work for us? What do you think?
You mean surveillance on behalf of the firm, on behalf of
Yeah, I mean, just what your people are doing.
I mean, they can take out their personal phone and use ChatGPT, and you don't even know what's happening if it's, even if you give them a business phone. People are going to use these tools regardless of whether you tell them to or not. There's rules about whether you can enter company confidential information, but they're going to use them for, hopefully they're following that rule and understand the implications of entering confidential company or client information into those general purpose tools if they're not in a tier where that's covered, and if it's forbidden by firm policies. But they're still going to be using them. I mean, at the end of the day, I don't think surveillance is the answer. This is too big of it's like a tsunami or a tidal wave or something. You can't surveil that. You've got to work to do damage control once it's already hit. You just got to be doing damage control. You can't be predicting where it's going to go or what's going to happen. This thing is already here, and surveilling it is not going to be the solution. And at the end of the day, you're going to be spending more resources and money surveilling what everybody's doing than actually just making sure it's implemented properly and uh, tracking the changes that are being made by the larger vendors through which the legal tech vendors are, connected. And I mean, I just think it's a waste of time and resources to be constantly surveilling everybody and then following through on those and having all these HR incidents, like where are you going with all that? I think
Yeah,
it's unreasonable. And people that are doing that are making a mistake.
yeah. What we need is a bigger security ops team.
Well, it also
Sarah,
goes.
what's your thoughts on how we obviously can't control it, so how do we contain it?
Yeah, well, it's so funny. Like just during when Nikki was talking, I was reminded of it was like this slide that was very popular. You saw it all the time in presentations about 5, 6 years ago, where big data is like teenage sex, where everyone says they're doing it, but no one really knows how to do it, and so they're
Nobody's doing it right.
yeah, and that's the thing. Like maybe it is also like this is because like basically they're going to do it anyway, so you might as well make sure they're doing it in the safest way possible. So I think that's probably and also just coming from my general professional development education pro background, that I think you're going to just have to do a lot more training and a lot more. You understand they're going to try. They're going to want to do it. So make sure if they understand the risks and they understand like what they're doing and why what they're looking at may or may not be valuable and why what they're doing may or may not be safe. Just kind of give as much like user training and opportunity and like safe spaces for them to experiment. So it's not like them other folks. I can't remember if I even like mentioned this last year during this episode that I was moderating a session and a question from the audience is a younger associate saying that they had a friend who always just brought his iPad into work and just was using ChatGPT privately. And you see like all the other like the like regular law firm people in the crowd is going like, "Oh my god, I have to go make a phone call." It is like the panic, like, yeah, I mean, again, it's like one of those things, it's gonna happen, so let's make sure it happens in the safest, most responsible way possible and not just them feeling like they can't tell you that they've made a mistake. That's the other thing. I always, creating like an open door, kind of open communication thing. If it does become like this forbidden fruit, then they're gonna be if they do screw up, they're not gonna tell you. Like, make it so it's not going to be the end of their career or the end of their world if they do tell you they made a mistake.
Yeah.
And I'll also add, like, some of this ties into actually getting the right tools that are useful for people to do their job. And I think there's a challenge doing that because, like, again, how are organizations capturing that type of value? Like, what's the value prop? Like, what are people doing? I don't know that everybody has a good grasp on all of that, on different workflows and things like that. So you bring in something which may work or may not work. And then if it doesn't work, then they're going to these shadow opportunities. So I think it's a that organizations need to get a handle on sort of what problem are we trying to solve here? What are we trying to do here? And make sure that the tools actually are up to snuff.
Well, Marlene, you brought up return on investment here, or value.
Yeah.
Um, I, I'm just wondering because I think we mentioned this last year as well. Well, we also have to start showing some return on our investment in 2025. I don't think that happened. I haven't seen a Skadden or a Kirkland or any of these step up and go, oh well, we reduced our cost by 20%, and thus our revenue has jumped by 40% yet. Unless I missed that one.
Unless they're
But
keeping it quiet, which they might be.
well, well, no, we never
No.
keep it quiet. My God, we're the
I
only industry that goes out and tells what everybody makes. So, and
I don't know. I feel
Bryson,
like
we have a damn list of every firm and how much money they make,
I just
and
feel
they're
like
not,
it's been
and
a little more
they're private.
closed.
These are private companies. These are not public entities.
They just feel it's like it's been a little more closed about sharing. And I know we're a big sharing community, but it feels like it's been a little more closed about here's what we've developed and here's the impact on. I mean, I could be wrong. I will toss it out to
I'll take
I'll
the other
toss it out
side
to
of
our
that.
guests and see what they said.
I'll take the other side of that because the answer is we have put a ton of money in this thing and we don't have jack coming out the other side. Sorry, we went on a little
We
rant
took
there.
over. Like, what do you guys think about this?
Well, I think that when they're actually going to start to see the return on their investment is when, and I think this is coming, when the billable hour gets discarded. Because right now, any increase in efficiency undercuts billable hours, and that's the bread and butter of large law firms are these $2,000 hourly billing rates, right? And so I think that once you start getting more AFAs implemented, you're going to start to actually see that return on investment. And I think I don't remember if I said this last year, but I have been saying this across the board in multiple outlets. I think that that's also where AI comes in. When you have AI that is built into either your practice management system or your legal billing system, and it's a sophisticated generative AI tool that can analyze all the law firm's historical data, billing data, and case related data. And then you can ask it, we have a potential client for this kind of case. This is the complexity. These are the issues involved. Give it all the information, look at all of our past similar cases and provide us with an AFA arrangement that will be both competitive and profitable, and it's able to crunch that in a way that was never available before. And I think that they can actually get really good output in that way. So I think that you're going to, what I think, and it's already happening because corporate legal counsel are some of the most sophisticated consumers of legal services. And corporate legal counsel are investing in these tools. They know that I can do half the work ahead of time and hand it off to them and get it. They'll have them do half as much work as they used to do by using these tools. And if they give me something back and charge me 15 hours that I know should have taken 4 because I know they have Harvey available in these other tools, they're going to push back and I'm not going to pay for this. And you're also going to start seeing that with insurance companies. I used to do insurance, I used to do plaintiffs and defense litigation work. Some of it was the defense work was insurance funded. And they're the same way. That's another very sophisticated buyer of legal services that pushes back on the billable invoices that come to them. They cut line items. They make you. They won't allow you to bill for certain types of work, and they're going to be doing the same thing. So once you start having these more sophisticated legal purchases of legal services pushing back, and it's already happening, I think you're going to start seeing it force, especially when boutique firms that spin off and are able to compete and do AFAs and flat fee arrangements, they're going to start undercutting the large law firms. So I think that it's already happening and you're going to see it happen a lot more next year. And I think that's when they're going to actually start to see the return on investment. I don't think you're going to see a return on investment with billable hour, but as Steve Embry would say on Bob's show, and he comes from the big law background, there's a lot more to it than just hourly billing. The entire system of a law firm is set up on that hourly billing framework, so it's easier said than done. I'll acknowledge that as well, but we'll see.
It's also the only system that the general counsel tends to know. And that's the only system they're rewarded on, because it's not what kind of AFA did you get us? It's what kind of discount did you get us off the billable rate? So the incentives needs to change across the board. I will take my privilege here and say that I do think the first return on investment is going to be back office. And I think you're going to look at, because you see it in the Fortune 500 companies right now, the ones that are coming out and are announcing, and they're doing it this quarter, announcing benefits that AI has brought to the bottom line for the company. One of them was a transportation company that was using AI to determine how best to ship back empty containers that have gone from one location to the other. And they said they used to take a person 3 hours to do it, and now the AI can do it in seconds and give an answer. It can be all automated, and people are cut out of the loop, and the efficiencies are astronomical, and it's increased their revenue by 20% in this one area because they were putting AI in it. So I think you're going to see more of that back office, just because the billable hour is such a monster to fight.
Yeah, that's exactly what I was gonna say. Lawyer work tools, ROI, not so much anytime soon. Back office tools, absolutely. Yeah.
So we're talking about information and exchange of information and keeping informed, and want to talk a little bit about sort of how we're doing that as an industry. So, the other day we were discussing the 20th anniversary of the clawbees and sort of fragmentation of social media. And, Sarah, I'll direct to you first. Like, you've been very active in the migration to Blue Sky. And so is the legal tech community still a cohesive thing, or are we sort of fracturing into sort of, different areas and sort of different discussion groups, and does it make it harder to kind of call out the BS that you like to identify?
I unfortunately, I do think the legal tech community is not yet a blue sky. I mean, it's definitely getting better, like, as a platform, because I mean, that was the one thing during the World Series. That was a real, like, oh, there are, like, a lot of people here now, and it's becoming more active. It's kind of unfortunate that I feel like part of the problem is that so many people got used to being kind of just free riders, that, the law Twitter community, there had, people joined, and it took, like, again, kind of the same thing. It took several years to build up, and it was able to be a slow burn, and some people were able to just kind of just watch, and they were like, I'm on law Twitter and I'm participating, but, like, they never posted. Actually, they maybe sometimes only just, like, interacted and liked. But that's the thing about social media, everyone has to contribute, especially at the beginning, to make it seem like a very interesting ecosystem and for there to be an exchange of ideas. I know it's one of those problems that I really wish there was. Like, I don't know if we, again, because I'm old, that we need to bring back like message boards or something, like some sort of way. Because like LinkedIn is terrible. I can't find anything on LinkedIn. I never see anyone I work with. I see like posts that are like 3 weeks old, or it's just like clearly generated AI slop from like marketers and stuff. There's this legal tech subreddit, and that's just basically like, who hates Harvey this week? And it's just like not that useful
Like
for
the
me.
haters. Yeah.
Yeah, I refuse to look at Twitter because every time I do, I almost get recruited into the Aryan Nation. That there's always like some posts like right in my feed. I'm like, I don't need to see that. Yeah, I mean, there's no real good. There was like a kind of a semi-active link. You had a Facebook group. I think you actually ran it out. I was like talking about that out loud. I'm like, I think actually Greg was the moderator on that. It was like a Facebook group of like legal tech or law
It's
librarians and tech.
legal marketing, right?
Yeah, but like, I
Yeah.
really wish there. I mean, honestly, what I really do wish is that people would get back more into blogging. Says the girl that hasn't published a blog post in like 6 months. But like, I think there's so much going on that requires, because I mean, legal tech or social media, even like LinkedIn posts and use short form social media. And I'm actually pro. I wish I could had more time to experiment with like TikTok or Reels on Instagram. You know, all those quick bites of like 35 seconds, 40 seconds, 140 characters, 280 characters, whatever. We can't really cover what's happening in that amount of time and have like real substantive discussions that we need to have. And so I wish more people would just start blogging again, because I mean, again, I feel very fortunate that I kind of came up at the time when people first started with blogging. We all, there's like Geek and Law blog, and there's a whole group of law librarian bloggers, and we all then, kind of migrated to Twitter. But we had that base first of kind of more, and we went back and forth between our long form thoughts and our short form thoughts. And now everyone's just like spitting out hot takes without any sort of context or follow up or unpacking. It's just like,
It's what the algorithm likes, though.
Mhm.
yeah, I know. That's the other unfortunate thing. All this, I mean, I absolutely believe the world is where, one of the reasons the world is where is that? It's because Google Reader
Mar-
got taken down.
March 2012, the world has gone to crap since.
Yeah, it's just like, without that, I mean, it's really shocking, like how it's so hard to find other people. I mean, it's, you're really luck of the draw. And then, like, I mean, at least probably once a month, I'll find someone, I'll start reading their stuff on LinkedIn. You'll go back and read other, I'm like, where's this person been all my life? I want to read everything they've ever said. And then, yeah, and it's hard to find these people again. There's no, and then maybe it's also just because the world is so big that there is no, like, LinkedIn again, there's no dedicated stream of just legal tech content. We can't do hashtags. We can't do
Yeah.
groups. It's just all everything. I mean, I guess if I win the lottery, I'll just start like a legal tech social network. But until then, just plugging away at my job. Like I'm in love. Yeah, I really feel like we are losing out as an industry, that we don't have a place to like centrally share ideas. Because that's the thing. Like, there's so much of what I miss about the initial social media landscape is not only just being able to like spout my mouth off and share my ideas, but I really did learn from other people, and just like seeing
Mhm.
new types of like ways of thinking about things, or even like hands-on, getting your hands dirty, trying this. I mean, we have no like really good place to exchange ideas like that anymore.
Well, and I don't think that we ever will again, because back then, I started blogging in 2005. And back then, there was such a small number of people in the legal space who were tech savvy enough to be online. So you really did have
That is
this
true.
really interesting combination of tech savvy people that had a legal background. And as everybody ended up online, Twitter with the hashtags was okay. But even before Musk bought it, I had gotten off the platform because it no longer received, you had to create your own list, because I have a first world problem, or maybe that's, I don't know the right word to call it, but I had 22,000 followers on Twitter. And even if you follow 8,000 people, I didn't even look at my main Twitter feed because it was just so much stuff. So you'd have to create lists, and then I forget what list I'd created that meant what. And so I just kind of gave up and got off Twitter, and I went to LinkedIn for any number of reasons. And I have like 206,000 followers on LinkedIn. So I kind of have but I'm very lucky because, first of all, if you click on the bell so that you're following people, they will show up more often than not in your feed and also in your notifications. So you need to follow them specifically, and that helps a lot. So you can kind of curate a list. But also, I'm fortunate enough that I have enough followers that are interested in what I write. Like, a lot of what I post on LinkedIn is just a summary of an article that I've written or a podcast that I've been on. So it's some kind of content that I've created about something I'm thinking about, because I still write, even though I'm not blogging. The people that follow me, the ones that actually follow what I say all the time versus the 206,000 that follow me, are very active in my comments. So they're constantly commenting, making substantive comments. They're from all across the legal tech sphere. You know, you actually usually find more comments than likes on all my posts. There's a significant amount of engagement there. So I'm kind of lucky because there's a community of sorts that's sort of involved in my own posting, and partly because of the amount of content that I put out, I think. I don't know. So for me, that's kind of filled that gap, but I don't think we're ever going to be able to have a dedicated legal tech space because there is knowledge management. There are librarians, which is distinct. You know, there's e-discovery, there's the AI people, then there's just legal tech in general, there's consultants, there's marketing. And it's almost like they all need their own spaces with a little bit of overlap. And you just can't do that anymore because everybody's online now and everybody didn't used to be online. So it's an unfortunate success story, I think.
Yeah. All right. Well, before we jump to the crystal ball question, let me ask real quick, since we're on this topic, Sarah, what's one go-to resource that you've been using in 2025 that you find indispensable?
I was going to take a page from Time Magazine Person of the Year. I want to say librarians. Trust, listen to librarians, but especially there's a blog called AI Law Librarians. And pretty much everyone who writes for that blog, I find and it's in a good mix of very kind of product overviews or thoughts, or even just how to use AI in your general life. But it's like really thinking about AI from someone who comes from kind of like a knowledge world perspective. And very, again, not overly hyped, but also not overly negative. I feel like it's a really good balanced take on AI in the world.
Tell us that one more time. What was the title of it?
AI Law Librarians.
All right, easy. Nikki, what's your go-to resource?
I would say it's two things. First, I really enjoy being on Bob's panel, and I think that me and being on it aside, it's a great place to hear from the people in the legal tech space that cover it. What's trending? That's every Friday at 3, Bob Ambrogi's Legal Tech Week panel. It's just a great place to get a sense of what's trending and what everyone's talking about and the big issues. But then in terms of a single person, I saw that this was a question on the list of things you were going to talk about. And the person that immediately came to mind for me with AI, especially for smaller firm lawyers, is my co-author Carolyn Oliphant. She doesn't blog anymore. Again, like you had said, Sarah, everyone kind of abandoned their blogs, and she was one of the OG bloggers in legal
Oh, yeah.
tech or in legal. But she consistently posts on LinkedIn about the way she's using AI, the way lawyers can use AI. She has like videos, she has analysis, she has white papers. She's constantly creating, like doing these deep dives that are how tos. And like most recently, she was the one that had got me thinking about. She was talking about Google, how she used Google Notebook LM to create an analysis of her position that lawyers can start to use the business tiers of the general use platform, AI platforms, because of all the protections involved in this. Google Notebook LM video took her analysis and put it in this really user-friendly way, and it's attached to her LinkedIn post. But so I love that because Google Notebook LM is a fantastic tool. I just wrote about it myself for my Daily Record article. And also, I should just provide some great information about practical use of AI.
Nice. Marlene, I'm gonna ask you, what's your go-to resource this year?
Oh, see, and you put me on the spot. I wasn't ready to answer the question. So let me see. I mean, I do use LinkedIn a lot. I have been listening to a number of podcasts. It's a bunch of sort of futurist thinkers, and they talk about all kinds of things, not just Gen AI, but they're talking about like quantum computing and sort of where things are going, and they look at it from multiple perspectives. And I like that because it's sort of outside of legal, and like I find that helps me because I like to connect like different ideas from different environments.
The one that I've been listening to a lot and reading is there's an AI guru kind of guy named Nate B. Jones. And if you Google Nate B. Jones, it'll come up. But it's the same as with you, Marlene. It's much more about what the foundation models are doing, uh, what's working, what's not working, and he's really good about as new versions come out to talk about how to get the most out of them, what they're doing, what you can do in Chat GPT 5.2 that you couldn't do in 5.1. And it's amazing how you can then apply that to your day to day and go, oh, yeah, like learning that ChatGPT 5.2 is agentic at default makes you understand, okay, if I know I can do that, then I know it can go out and search websites, but also verify that the information that it's getting is right and can go back if it's not. So it's makes the user experience for me a little bit different by knowing the underlying kind of features of what these things can do. So,
All right, I found it. It's
all right.
moonshots. It's moonshots.
Moonshots. All right. We'll put that on the show notes.
Actually, I thought of another one if I can like pop in with a
All
third.
right. Well,
Yeah,
Nikki
sure.
got 2, so you get to get 2.
Okay. This is more about general tech industry as a whole, like the business side of things. It's called Ed Zitron's. It's a newsletter. Ed Zitron is the author, and it's Where's Your Ed At? I think if you just Google Ed Zitron, it'll come up. But I mean, it's terrifying. You want to talk about like, are we in a bubble? Like, why hasn't the bubble burst? Looks at, like, hey, OpenAI is still into NVIDIA, and NVIDIA is still into OpenAI, and like how like really shows how maybe a little bit of a house of cards, if not a bubble.
Yeah.
But it's
It's a
it's
little
really
Enron.
interesting for someone who's not like necessarily business minded to hear like that perspective and understand like what's all going on the business, because that's all this. If OpenAI goes, a lot of legal tech goes as well.
Yeah.
So yay. That's like cheery thoughts that I every now and then think about right before I'm going to bed. Like, oh dear.
So, all right, Sarah, you teed me up perfectly for the crystal ball question. So, thank you for that. I'm going to ask both of you. Speaking of bubbles, like, what is the single biggest bubble that's going to burst in 2026? Nikki can go first.
I definitely think it's some sort of financial bubble related to AI. I don't know what it's going to look like, but I think that on a broader scale, sort of a across the board recession that's potentially caused by some sort of AI bubble that's just going to trickle down into our industry. And I don't think 2026 is going to be pretty. I'm not sure why, but I have a very foreboding feeling about 2026. So, and more on again, like a broader cross, a broader view, not just legal tech, but I think it's definitely going to filter into legal tech, and it's not going to be pretty. I can't be super specific. I just think it's going to be bad.
Yeah, I
Sarah?
mean, again, for that Ed Zitron newsletter, it was one of I forget which company released a new image generator. And he like kind of even did the math like, okay, each one of these is costing the company this much money to make because you just based on the compute power. And I mean, there's so much that can go wrong with the general AI industry, from data centers and like not getting those built far along fast enough, and chip availability, and then just the fact that all the financial, like how much money OpenAI is burning still on a daily basis. Yeah, and then the fact that in previous, when Pets.com went under, Thomson Reuters did not even notice. If OpenAI goes under, what's that going to be for the Harveys of the world? Or the fact that there's so many legal tech companies, and like they'll be monolistic, but they still are using OpenAI and Claude and various ones that it's like, what's going to happen there? And I also do worry, talking about how we were like earlier talking about the ROI. One of the neat things of the past 3 years has been the ability to spin up a legal tech company. Like the barriers have been lowered greatly. Like you really didn't, you just needed an API connection for a lot of these companies. You couldn't just make a legal tech company. And then it's getting to the point like there is, I have 3,000 listings currently on Legal Tech Hub that next year there's not going to be 3,000 listings, or there won't be like that many. I think we're going to start seeing some of these littler companies that never really made a grab into the market, never really got funding, never just kind of ran out of their runway, and they're probably going to fold or get absorbed in some way. So I think we're going to see kind of like that mini bubble. But yeah, like if the big one goes, I don't know, it's going to be like the volcano under Yellowstone. I think like we'll have more things to worry about than legal tech going bad. It'll be a bad thing.
All right, I'm going to jump in and make my prediction now. So I was listening to something coming into work this morning, and it talked about how reliant companies are on essentially the 3 or 4 big AI companies. So you can probably say OpenAI, Anthropic, and X, with whatever they're calling it, XAI, because they have their own infrastructure. And companies like Meta are using open source Chinese AI systems to try and fill in the gaps that they have with their own systems, because it just hasn't worked. I think my big, hairy, audacious projection, my BHAP, is the Meta, I think, is in more trouble than people think it is. And so it's going to be interesting to see if they fail on producing or keeping up with the AI siblings that are out there, cousins, I guess. I think they're in trouble. And so, and if a big company like Meta can be in trouble, just think of the other ones that are trying to develop their own AI systems or to develop something that's not tied to those four biggies. They may be in trouble as well. So,
Mhm.
Marlene?
So I think next year you're going to start seeing the impacts and this is something that I listened to on that podcast, Moonshots, about the economy of scarcity and the economy of abundance. And while I am a strong believer that there will be new jobs and new things for people, I think next year and possibly, the year after, we're going to see a lot of disruption there as, some of these new technology tools become better, start doing some of the basic work that people are doing. And, people have to find themselves sort of a new spot before, we sort of move to this, everybody gets their allocated, stipend per month or something. So I think you're gonna see some of that. And hopefully you're gonna see organizations preparing their people for that.
All right. Well, Sarah Glassmeyer, Nikki Black, I want to thank both of you very much for coming on for year 2 of our year in review. Thank you very much.
Thank you for
Thank
having
you.
me.
A lot of fun.
And thanks to all of you, our listeners, for taking the time to listen to the Geek and Review podcast. If you enjoyed the show, please share it with a colleague. We'd love to hear from you on LinkedIn, TikTok, and Blue Sky.
And Sarah, where can people find out more about you?
Probably the easiest way is to go to sarahglassmeyer.com, my blog I've had since 2007. And they are links to all the social media places that I flit around on. But yeah, I think like LinkedIn or Blue Sky are probably my most active right now.
All right. And we'll be expecting that blog post in at the beginning of January. And Nikki, how about you? Where's the best place for people to find you?
Definitely at this point, LinkedIn's probably the easiest.
Yep.
And as always, the music you hear is from Jerry David DeSica. Thank you very much, Jerry.
All right. Bye, everyone. Happy New Year.
Happy New Year.